On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, will GTA 6 be playable in co-op? Over 700 shops with interiors. A huge new leak dissected. It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Hello and welcome to episode 77 of GTA 6 o'clock, the world's most in-depth and best connected GTA 6 show. We've got a slightly different, shorter show for you today for reasons that will soon become obvious, and we'll be dissecting another huge GTA 6 leak. I'm your host, Dan D.D. Dawkins, and not joining me today is my co-host James J.J. Jarvis, who is currently flying over the Atlantic Ocean. As we've said several times on GTA 6 o'clock, it may surprise you to learn that our actual day jobs are making gaming showcases. So James has been out in LA to make sure the Future Game Show went really well. So I hope everyone caught up with and enjoyed that last weekend. But we are here today to talk GTA 6 rumours. And oh boy, have we got a big one. A really big leak that everyone's talking about. We're going to dissect all of the big features from it. So let's dive in. So this week's big news is a purported leak from someone called GameRoll, who is somebody who's very active on X or Twitter, and he works for GTA Base. Now, GTA Base sells itself as the largest GTA website dedicated to providing information on all Rockstar games, including GTA 6, GTA 5, GTA Online, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, this is quite a well-known website to the community. It was registered in 2019, and they generally deal in kind of roundup articles of information for the game. They do a really good job at rounding up GTA Online information, so you can get a really good sense of the value of your virtual properties and such like. But this seems to be more of a personal leak. Now, I don't want to misrepresent what GameRoll has got here. He's been really straightforward and direct about what this is and what this isn't, and also about how true this rumor may or may not be. Now, why should we pay attention to GameRoll? Well, previously, he leaked the full names of Jason and Lucia in an X post on April the 19th. Now, that's remarkable because Trailer 2 wasn't revealed until May the 6th. And that's also when Rockstar released their official GTA 6 website. And we learnt Jason and Lucia's full name. So what he said back on April 19th was, GTA 6 conversation has sort of dried up by now. So, hey, here's a fun question. What do you guys think Jason and Lucia's last names are? My guesses are Lucia Caminos and Jason Duval. Why? Because they sound cool. Duh. Well, as was proved to be the case, these names were absolutely spot on. So this does suggest that GameRoll has a legitimate source, and we'll go on to talk about the nature of that in a minute because he's been very transparent about it. And there was a fun follow-up to that initial name leak, which I think a lot of people picked up on. And GameRoll himself had said, one thing I'll also say is that this source made it very clear to me that a delay to 2026 was absolutely, and he put this in capitals, necessary. And he said, if we had gotten GTA 6 in 2025, it would have been a significantly worse game. They began cutting a lot of cool stuff to try and make that deadline. So before we get into the actual leaks, and there's quite a lot to talk about, there's a bit more context from GameRoll himself, who I think has been he's been transparent and a bit uncomfortable about the attention this has got him. He doesn't want to be seen as a big leaker or a big information source. So he put out on X, he said, I just want to say, I know that leaks suck. I never wanted this to happen. He said, I ran my mouth to some friends on Discord, and I was naive to expect it all wouldn't end up on Reddit. Since then, I've just been as open and as honest as possible about what the info is and where it comes from, in order to have the full context out there so people can make up their own minds. I posted the entire list, and by that he means the list of features from the game, yesterday, to have a definite list of everything that the source has told me. People were already starting to make things up. That list is literally everything. If you see anything said that isn't on the list, I never said it. And then he signs off, let Rockstar cook. I love you all and thank you all for the support. Expect nothing like this again from me. So now we're going to dive into the actual gameplay information and features that Game Roll leaked. If you really, really, really want to stay spoiler free, you might want to tap out. But I've got to add, we don't know that this stuff is true. It's just that Game Roll previously got the second names of Jason and Lucia right. So there is some good precedence here. So, it's worth paying attention to. Also to add, there's nothing here really to do with story or anything that I would personally be upset to learn. So even Game Roll himself, his big disclaimer was, I have no proof of any of this information other than it's all come from the exact same source who told me Jason and Lucia's last names. It is not a direct source. They claim to be a friend of a Rockstar developer. I asked them to find out Jason and Lucia's names so I could verify their story once they were eventually revealed, and that's what happened. Some stuff here may be false, misinterpreted, or complete BS. I trust the source, but I've got no way to prove any of it. Now, all I would say about that, as someone who's dealt with sources and rumours for the best part of 20 years of my journalism career, is that, and this is annoying for people and why you get called out all the time on social media, that's sometimes how it is. You get a source and you have to make your own judgment of how trustworthy they are. And there's no way of proving it without selling them out or giving them up. And you just can't do that or you don't get the information. So I think I can buy that explanation. Doesn't make it any more or less true, but I can understand why he would want to put that out there. So with no further ado, let's get into the leaks themselves. Now, the first feature on the list is 6-star wanted level returns. Now, in itself, I think this makes a lot of sense. GTA 5 capped out at a 5-star wanted level, but previously in the series, there was a 6-star wanted level. I won't go into a semantic description of what the 1 to 6-star triggers are and what causes it, but 1-star wanted level is obviously pretty low level criminality. 6-star is stuff like when you try to leave the GTA map and let's say blew up the police guarding a bridge, it would essentially be usually killing police officers or anything with an incredible degree of explosivity. So what would happen then with the 6-star wanted level is essentially, rather than it being a police chase, the army would take over. So you'd be chased by things such as rhinos or the barrack vehicles. It makes sense to me that this would come back to GTA 6. Doesn't make it necessarily true, but I could see that this is like a fan requested thing. What will be most interesting in GTA 6 is how this looks, because visually the game's taken such a big leap up that you can imagine things looking pretty chaotic. Now, the second feature, it says the relationship bar mentioned in the 2022 leaked clips still exists. It works like honor in Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, we obviously don't know what the relationship bar relates to, as it will eventually appear in GTA 6. What we do know is Rockstar has repeatedly hinted at trust being a key mechanic, as seen from the first trailer. Trust. Will it relate purely to Jason and Lucia, or will it relate in a bigger way to Jason and Lucia's relationship with the characters in the world? Now, the Honor Sister in Red Dead Redemption 2 is more about how you're seen within the world and the positive interactions you have with NPCs and various other people. It will also have an impact on the way the ending might develop. So if you're more honorable, it might change the way that moves forward. We just don't know how ultimately this will relate to GTA 6, but I'm sure you could do your own speculation. Do I believe it could be in there? Sure, because as we've said repeatedly on this show, the trust mechanic, particularly between Jason and Lucia, seems to be really critical. The next feature, it says weight mechanics are a thing. Not sure if this relates to like character size and weight, or if it's more to do with vehicles and the way they impact with each other, or objects that get dropped in the world. Either way, it would be a cool nod to real world physics. Explorable underwater areas with treasure and secrets. Sure, we've talked about this a lot on previous shows. We did a really good episode where James looked at real life, I guess like treasure hunting locations or places that are a bit more mythical around real life Miami. There's loads of great areas to explore. So this only makes sense to me and almost doesn't feel like a leak. It just feels like a thing you would assume to be true. The next one is a fun little reveal. It says the trailer 2 scene where Jason buys beer and you see him walking out of the store is a gameplay clip. Well, Rockstar had said themselves that the trailers were, people assumed it was mostly like CG or cutscene, but in fact they said, no, this is a mix of gameplay. And that scene is gameplay. So, wow, looks great. I don't think that's much more than a fun detail. Now, Game Roll also says that you have the ability to greet and antagonize in the game, which I guess would be a way that you approach NPCs, and then in Newton's law style, you get an equal and opposite reaction probably to the way you react. Now, we're told the character wheel has 3 options, and this feels like quite a big thing potentially. Solo Jason, solo Lucia, and dual protagonist control, where Lucia and Jason can be controlled at the same time to rob together in the open world. Some missions are also started using the 2 of them at once. Now, this is really interesting, and I'd interpreted this as initially as co-op, where you might have the ability to have friends drop in and drop out of missions. One plays one plays the other. But I wonder also if it's an ability to tackle missions as like, one of the 2 solo, or using the other and their abilities as a foil that you can control. There's quite a long history of video games letting you do prompts for other characters. Like I've just been playing through God of War Ragnarok, where the character, you always have a support character with you who's essentially automated, but you can press buttons to get them to fire off what's like runic attacks and things like that. So it might be there's an option like that where it's like single player plus essentially an AI agent with some degree of automation or control on your side. We don't know. There's probably a bigger discussion James and I can have about the game being co-op and what it means for online, but I think this is an interesting feature to talk about. Now, a fun little thing, it just says a rectangular GPS with pink waypoints. Let's see. Now, this next one is a bit weird. It says Jason has a dead eye ability, which slows down time and reveals weak spots. Now, in itself, that makes sense. That's something we've seen a lot in the Red Dead games. Now, he also says Lucia can do it, but 1 shot. And the source says this is apparently super bad, and they hope it gets changed. It's meant to show how Jason is a better shot than Lucia due to his time in the army. Now, I don't know if he means it's super bad because the mechanics for both are bad, or if it means that the fact that Lucia's ability is nerfed is bad. I don't know. I think it will make sense for them to have different skills that are complementary. So Jason having a really good Deadeye shot makes sense, but in a similar way to GTA 5, where some of the characters were better driving and had different abilities, I think that would make sense to have some sort of differentiation. Let's wait and see. The next one is people react to having your gun out. Like, of course, we know Rockstar is striving for realism. That will be a nice touch where you have to be conscious of how your characters appears. This one feels fun and I guess more in line with the way Rockstar are moving as a company. It says male strippers are in the game. And also the next feature is driving is the best it's ever been. Sure, I mean, that's such a blanket statement. Who can tell? I saw people harking for a return to the physics of GTA 4. At the same time, I saw like a meme-like video of people going, remember GTA 4's driving? And like a car just careening across the street and spinning. So I think best is a very blanket phrase. I would expect it to feel more hefty and realistic. I wouldn't expect the car to be like flighty and truthfully a nightmare. Maybe there will be driving aids or some degree of realism within the driving. We'll have to wait and see. This is interesting. It says gore and dismemberment is being built off Red Dead Redemption 2. It always feels like this is a bit of a fine line for Rockstar to tread. The games are already under a wider media spotlight for basically how violent they are and how it lets people live out, I guess, like, violent power fantasies in vaguely real-world settings. I think given current events in the wider world, particularly in Los Angeles at the moment, this feels like Rockstar have a decision to make. And I don't know which way they're going to end up going, but I think making the game really gratuitous and gory does pose a lot of risks. And then particularly in this social media meme culture, I think that could spin out of control quite quickly. So I think they've got to draw the line carefully there. Now, it also says the limited weapon system returns, and it says stored in trunk. Now, that's something we've talked about on the show a few times, the idea that you'll be able to carry limited weapons in your hands, but you can store a bigger arsenal of weapons in the trunk. This sounds deeply plausible to me. Now, a quick word on characters. There's only one character referenced, and this is Donnie, who's Jason's friend who works for Brian and is described as a freak. Now, we do know a little bit about one of Jason's friends, which is Cal Hampton, who we talked about in a previous episode, who's covered in tattoos. One of them was a manhunt tattoo of Pigsy. Now, we know him. He's a big conspiracy freak. That's all been chronicled on the website. Donnie is not a name that's been officially revealed. I don't quite know what this means. A freak could mean a lot of different stuff. I guess it's just someone who's really wild. There doesn't seem much point speculating on this. Let's wait and see. Now, some details about the map. The first of these felt a bit surprising to me. It says, the map is once again an island. Now, that makes sense, I guess, for the south side of Leonida. It's covered by the ocean. That makes total sense. But in real life, the Florida area does join into Georgia and becomes the mainland. So I do find this a little bit surprising. However, all of that said, in real life, Florida is joined to the essentially is part of the mainland. And that is a huge area of connected land that Rockstar would have to somehow block out or fudge. Now, they can't do a Game of Thrones thing and build the Great Wall. They could put really large mountains and have a few bridges that are out of commission that people can't get across. But given the entire north perimeter of Florida is in real life connected to land, it's quite a bold move to waterlock that. But it does solve the problem of people going, escaping essentially from Florida. I don't know on this one. It's a surprise to me. Who can tell? So what do we mean by no panhandle? This is something I had to check on. Now, I guess in American terminology, a panhandle refers to a geographically long, narrow strip of land that projects outwards from a larger landmass, often resembling the handle of a pan, which makes sense. And it says it's used to describe parts of states like Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, and Idaho. So what we're saying in GTA 6 is that there's no panhandle. I guess in terms of the geography, some people have talked about this will improve your ability to see lots of the map all at once, depending on where you're stood. Once again, it feels difficult to speculate, but in itself an interesting detail. Now, we're getting to the rumours that feel like they're really pushing the boundaries and going to cause some headlines. So the first is that it says enterable shopping malls and skyscrapers with lifts. Now, this is potentially wild. Like, even one shopping mall, and even given the world that all real life shops seem to be closing down, a shopping mall contains often hundreds of shops. It might be, say, as little as 50 shops. That's still an astonishing amount of shops. A skyscraper, by definition, will contain 10, 20, 50, 100 floors. Now, are we saying that every single one of those floors is enterable? I would imagine no chance. But what it might mean is we get skyscrapers where you can go to certain floors, which might be for specific missions, or you go all the way to the roof. Now, this the leak goes even further to say there are 700 or more shops, and mostly with interiors of a major open world game. Now, this again is wild. I think given even what we've seen in previous GTA games, when you look past the sort of key set piece locations and ammunition and the stores that you do go in, plus your own buildings that you buy, 700 shops is so many. Now, to be fair, Game Roll, this is the one where in brackets he says, this is the one I'm most iffy about. So that feels like a huge wait and see. This has long been rumoured that one of the big differences with GTA 6 would be the ability to create more interior depth. So buildings aren't just textures, though they've got real doors and real 3D interiors. We'll have to see to what extent this pans out. Now we're getting near the end of the leaks. We're talking now about story and missions. He says himself, I'm not going to spoil much here. Of course, that's great. I don't know if he knows more than he's saying or he literally doesn't know. He does say, however, and again, avert your ears if you don't want any spoilers, the game has chapters like Red Dead Redemption 2. There's 5 chapters in total, and this is really interesting. The shots from trailer 2 were all from chapters 1 to 3. Now, what I would say is interesting for us on GTA 6 O'Clock is this is exactly what we speculated last week, that it feels like both trailers are actually from a fairly compact section of the game. If you know your Rockstar games and you know how they can develop and how they can develop through time, it could be that if there are 5 chapters of GTA 6, what we see in chapters 4 and 5 might feel like a big leap, and it might even be a big time leap. That's a conversation for another day, but it is interesting that Rockstar are assuming this is true, just showing us a very small amount of stuff. Now, there was a small section in the leaks about cut content, or what it says was non-existent content. So it says, no fully nude sex scenes. I mean, look, there's plenty of places on the internet you can get your fix. I wouldn't worry about that. It says that listening to music outside of a car apparently isn't a thing. Now, that runs contrary to a few things we speculated on the show and little hints in GTA 6 trailer 2, so I guess we'll wait and see. It's always felt to me like that seems like a natural step for them to give you some kind of personal music device. I honestly can't tell, but we'll wait and see as we get closer to the game. Apparently, the ability to go prone was cut a while ago. I think this was something that was talked about around about the leaks. We don't know. It also says dual wielding weapons isn't in the game. I mean, that was technically sort of never in with the leaks. I think people have speculated that way. We'll wait and see. Now, this one is of interest, particularly to GTA 6 O'Clock. It says no Disney World parody in the game. Now, I could look at this from 2 perspectives, and one is Disney World feels like such an obvious and easy location to parody if you're going to be in Florida. On the flip side, and I'm sure I've said this in the show before, there's 2 big problems with Disney World or any of the theme parks that Florida is famous for. One is you're potentially treading on the copyright of a very rich company. Not even Rockstar want to go to war with Disney for infringing copyright or being seen to, I guess, insult their world they've created and their IP. So there's a pure financial side to this. The other is, what are theme parks famous for? Well, they're family locations. And if you've got a theme park that would, in theory, be full of children, unless it was some bizarre adult-only theme park, the potential for that to go so wrong in the game is huge. And wrong to an extent where the phrase, all PR is good PR wouldn't be true. So I can totally see that argument. I think Rockstar couldn't take the risk at all of that kind of scandal. So it might be they make the decision just to cut the theme parks. My personal take would be, I imagine there would be a nod to some kind of commodified large brand theme park. Now, it might be that it's an abandoned one, and then it's a bit easier because you can have it there and have it a bit rusty and decrepit and make jokes without the fear of people being there. We'll wait and see. And then it also says no burglary mini games, which is again that came out of the leaks. A lot of people seemed excited about that. It doesn't seem like it's happening. So there we go. So that's a roundup of everything that's been talked about in the game roll leaks. Do I think it's true? I don't know. Like, in isolation, this is a guy who's got one thing definitely right, and it's something that feels a bit beyond randomly getting lucky with. It wasn't like a speculation, like getting the second names of Jason and Lucia bang right 2 weeks ahead of time. You've just got to know that. You just can't get lucky with it. So someone at some point in time has clearly given Game Roll good information. Now, whether they've given them this, more information, or whether all of this is true, or some of it is true, or some is misreported, and as I say, Game Roll's really clear about this, he's not sure either, or whether it's currently in the game, but then eventually doesn't appear in the game because they've still got another almost year of development. Things can get cut, things can get put in. We don't know. So that's it for today's show. Hope you enjoyed this little deep dive into the latest roundup of leaks and rumours. James will return next week, so it isn't just my voice droning on and me speaking to myself. If you enjoyed this week's episode and you like the show generally, please like today's episode and please subscribe to the show and encourage your friends to subscribe because it really helps us out. And on that front, I'd also remind you that I create every single week a GTA 6 o'clock newsletter, which goes live every Thursday at 6 p.m. BST. Now, if you want to get hold of that, please subscribe to gamesradar.com/newsletter and look for the GTA 6 tick box. That newsletter is free, which is a very good price, and it happens every single week. And I'd love to hear your comments about it in the YouTube below, or drop us a line on our Gmail address, which is gtavioclock@gmail.com. And until then, I will see you next week for another episode of GTA 6 o'clock.